Hi there, I'm Linda Miller, for those of you that don't know me, and we're here tonight to listen to Steve Taylor talk about why are we calling this lovely place we live in the Upper Valley and the history of that. So he's a neighbor of ours from Meriden, New Hampshire. Come on up, Steve.
Good. Oh, good. Well, thank you for inviting me back over to Hartford. I think this is probably my third or fourth time coming here in this room. I don't know. You keep track, but I don't know. It's always been fun. I always get to see lots of people I know from long ago, and it continues right now. Anyway, as you heard, I live in Plainfield, but I also live in Meriden. It's just like over here, where you've got Wilder and Queechee and so on, all part of Hartford. Meriden is part of Plainfield. But it's very confusing because there are two villages in Plainfield. There's Plainfield Plain, that's on the west side town by the river, and then there's this Meriden, which is over on the east side. And my father always said there were two villages divided by mud. All right? Well, it was a 7-mile road between the two, and that road wasn't paved until about 1970. And it was a mud road, I'm telling you. They used to alternate town meeting, because they had two town halls, all right? And one year they'd have a town meeting over here and the other one over there. And usually you'd have to go to Lebanon because to get on a tire road to go to the other village, because you wouldn't go on that darn stage road. So anyway, what the heck's that?
It's a cell phone. Sorry.
Oh my God. That's a new one. I've heard them bird calls and all kinds of stuff. Machine gun fire. Good Lord. Yeah. Anyway, so Plainfield, this town, the whole deal down there, grew up with two of everything. Okay, 2 post offices, 2 telephone exchanges, 2 libraries, 2 schools, 2 fire departments, 2 granges, on and on and on. That's the way it always has been. It's crazy. But now we've come together a little bit more, and they paved the road and built a central school, and it's helped pull us together. The town in my life, I've always lived there except for the time I was in the Army, and the town's changed enormously in my lifetime. It is incredible. We always were a great farming town, had a lot of farms, but we still have some good agriculture, real nice agriculture. But as you know, just like Hartford and all the other towns around here, we've become basically a bedroom town for the medical center and the college and all the activity that happens over in that area. And these people are new neighbors. I call them, they're highly educated, they're very well paid. They work very hard, but you know, the sad part is they don't have time for community. You know, you can't get them to come out for something like this. They're too busy. They aren't going to come. But about the only thing that draws those people in is if they got kids in the school, and then they're very focused on being active and involved with the school part. So anyway, that's the long and the short of it. But this talk is, I'm here because it's funny to me. And it's funny in the sense that it's crazy, all right? You'll see why I'm saying that. Anyway, well, I got to start you right off quick. If this is the Upper Valley, what the hell is Colebrook, New Hampshire? What's St. Johnsbury? All right? Upper Valley, for God's sakes. I mean, what that says is that the Connecticut River flows uphill to Legend Bridge. I mean, if you want to cause trouble, go up. I got a lot of friends up in Colebrook, and they say, Upper Valley, what the hell are you talking about? You're crazy. Oh, my God. Well, and they got a point, as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, it's worth considering, where the heck did that term come from? How did it happen? Well, it's very simple. It all came about because of a newspaper war. All right? And that's what I'm going to talk about right here. First, we have to start off with a little history. In 1946, the Manchester newspapers, the Union and the Leader, came up for sale, all right? It was owned by, at the time, the widow of Frank Knox. Frank Knox ran for vice president on the 1936 Republican national ticket with Al Flandin. And he was quite an operator. He owned a lot of newspapers, and one of them just happened to be this outfit in Manchester. Well, he was Republican, but he served Franklin Delano Roosevelt as Secretary of the Navy during World War II. Well, right after he died, his widow, she didn't want to fool around with newspapers, put them all up for sale. Chicago's American and the Manchesters and others, and asked for bids. Well, one of the bids came in right off quick, was from the Ritter family. The Ritter, of course, later became Knight Ritter, Miami Herald, San Jose Mercury News, a whole bunch of others. But Mrs. Knox, she didn't like German people, so she wouldn't sell to the Ritters, okay? So the papers stayed on the market, and along came a man by the name of John McLean Clark. John McLean Clark was part of the McLean dynasty in New Hampshire. Going back in time, they've been governors, they've prominent businessmen, bankers, all kinds of things. And there's still quite a bunch of them around now. But one we just had, she was our congresswoman there, over across the river. She's one of that tribe. But anyway, John McLean Clark married into this McLean family, or his mother did, and so he's working at the Washington Post as an editorial writer, and he hears about the Manchester papers coming up for sale, so he puts together, gets bankers and stuff, puts together a bid, all right, and he seems to have the inside track until literally about 11:45 before the deadline, a guy named William Loeb came in, and he had a higher bid. And Mrs. Knox said, well, here you go, Mr. Loeb. Well, Mr. Loeb, of course, if you were everybody in New Hampshire knew all about this guy after a while. He was what you'd call a journalistic crank. He was a very, very vicious, difficult person. I mean, it's an ancient history. Anyway, John McLean Clark lost out, and he was totally disappointed that he lost out, because he had his heart set on doing this. Well, he heard there was a newspaper coming up for sale in Claremont, up in that Connecticut Valley area. And he came up and negotiated a deal, and he bought that paper in 1947. Well, he had a lot of talent, and he had the money behind him, and he proceeded to make this little daily paper, the Claremont Daily Eagle, into a hell of a regional newspaper. He brought in good people and good writing and good photography and everything. And this paper, as he moved it along, it became really known as a top regional newspaper. And his region that he covered, the Eagles franchise really, was from Orford and Bradford, fairly up there, all the way down to Bellows Falls, Charlestown, over either side this way. East and west. And it was a going operation. And he attracted some really great talent. One of the people that worked at the Eagle in those days was a guy named Nelson Bryant. He was, for many, many years, until just a few years ago, the outdoors columnist for the New York Times. Another one was a guy named Mel Wax. He was editor of the San Francisco Chronicle. He did a whole bunch of things that he pulled in, all these hot shots that were really good, and built this great newspaper. But in November 1950, Clark and two of his kids in November that had a freshet, Sugar River was flooding, and they went out in a canoe, and the canoe overturned and Clark drowned. All right, so holy smoke. What's going to happen? Well, Mrs. Clark takes over. She has to run this thing. She's got 5 kids, and she's had this whole project thrown in her lap. And you have to give her credit. She took on the challenge and did everything she could to keep it rolling. Now, during this time, the Eagle called its territory the Twin State Valley, all right? And the Eagle had a radio station called WTSV, Twin State Valley, all right? Well, there's one over here in Lebanon, Twin State Lebanon, and so on. But anyway, Mrs. Clark took over and tried to run, and well, she was running it and working real hard. Give her credit, it was amazing. But here it is, it's 1951 or so. There's a couple of young Ivy League guys on the staff. They had been served in World War II. One went to Dartmouth, the other one went to Harvard. And they began to feel that Mrs. Clark wasn't up to it, that the paper was losing its bearings. It just wasn't what it had been when John McLean Clark was running the show. And they got thinking, maybe we could do better. Let's think about that, see if we could do better. And by golly, they had rich wives. So that was a big, big plus in this whole thing. And so anyway, well, first of all, though, who are these two guys? Jim Farley. Jim Farley, and both these guys live in Plainfield, all right? Jim Farley, Dartmouth man, and his wife was a Bacon from Boston, a famous publishing house, Allen Bacon. And then the other one was Allen Butler, and his father, well, his grandfather, was the novelist Winston Churchill. Not the Winston Churchill from England, the Winston Churchill from Cornish, all right? And his father was an interesting man. His mother was a Churchill, and married a guy named also Allen Butler. Allen Butler was a physician. He was a very prominent pediatrician at Mass General and Harvard Medical School. And the interesting thing about him was in the late 1940s, he advocated for a single-payer health system for the United States. And the medical societies, they ran him out. I call him a communist. And so, of course, as you all know, we never got that. But anyway, so young Butler and Farley, and they got women that got money. Allen Butler's wife is Augustine Pardee Butler, and they called her Dee. And she had plenty of money, mister. Anyway, so they got thinking, let's go start a new newspaper in this territory. It seems like a good area, and see what we can do. And we got money from our wives, and we can put this all together. Well, so they came up to Lebanon, and they rented what had been a Kaiser Fraser dealership over on Route 10 on the way to Wilder Dam, right there on the left. You know, in recent years been a furniture outlet and a whole bunch of other things. But anyway, so they rented that. They got an old press. They got a White River Junction address, which they needed in order to get an Associated Press franchise. And so that was it. They bought the Landmark, which was a little weekly. They bought the subscriber list, all that, and they got started with putting together this newspaper. They needed a design, and so there was this famous graphic artist over in Woodstock named Frank Lieberman. They hired him, and he did this proposed layout, and all using the certain typefaces and how to put it all together. And it was wonderful. Later on, they won some national prizes because of their typography. Well, I got to have a name, and so they thought it was going to be Valley Times, but they found out there was already a Valley Times down in Pennsylvania, and so they said, okay, Valley News. Aha. Well, then, okay, we're starting up this new newspaper, and it's going to be Hanover, Lebanon, White River Junction, right in that area. What are we going to call it? That regional. What kind of identity are we going to use? Well, they called it Tri-Towns. Well, that didn't really catch on very well right off the bat. So how are we going to differentiate it? What are we going to do? All right, hey, let's call ourselves the Upper Valley, all right? So the Upper Valley, in their definition, was you draw a line, Plainfield, Windsor, and then everything north. and that was going to be their territory, and that basically taking away half of the Daily Eagle's territory, all right? So, Upper Valley, here it comes. 1952, June 9th. They started, the press is up, first issue came off the press. There was a lot of people said they're crazy. The Rutland Herald wrote a snotty editorial saying they might as well quit tomorrow and forget it. Locals around here in Hartford and Lebanon, they were bemused by these Ivy League boys with their rich wives coming in, starting a new newspaper. Ha, ha, ha. Anyway, but anyway, here it is, the Upper Valley and the Twin State Valley, and that set off an incredible newspaper war, and I'll get into that. But think about 1952, what this region was like. It was a time when a lot of things were happening, and these guys were plunging into the middle of it. Agriculture was consolidating. The hill farm culture was vanishing. Just, you know, from thousands of farms down to hundreds of farms. Textile mills were declining. Quechee woolen and Bridgewater woolen, Hartford woolen, Lebendale, American woolen, Baltic mills, Dorr, all those were going away. They were folding up. The distances from Boston to the rest of the world were 2-lane roads and railroads that were slowing down. If you wanted to go from here to a Red Sox game, it would take about a part of 4 hours to go on these 2-lane roads. But that's the way it was. Land was cheap. There wasn't much development happening. Damn few restaurants. Not much to do. I always thought it was interesting that you had theaters in Lebanon. They called it the Opera House. And White River was called the Lyric. And Hanover was a Nugget. And they'd have all three would have the same damn movie. You know, it'd be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then it would change. And the rest of the other 4 days it'd be the same, just like that. So what do you do? There weren't many restaurants, damn few restaurants. As a teenager, it was a tough slog because there wasn't much to take a girl out. Mostly went parking, all right. Cops running around, they didn't bother you. Oh, God, they'd say to a girl, well, you want to go count the lights at Wilder Dam? Oh, yeah, crazy stuff. The big thing that really hit in this time, and I think it probably changed the culture of this region as much as the interstate highways coming later on. In 1954, the coming of television. In Plainfield in 1953, late, Tracy Spaulding ran General Store. And he got a franchise to sell General Electric television sets, all right? And I thought, hey, this is crazy. One day, a box truck came, unloaded a great big bunch of these damn TV sets. And Tracy had them in the aisle between the grocery shelves. And, oh, my God, everybody thought he's lost his mind. Now, you remember those TV sets in those days? Well, this big, you know? And then he took one out of the box, and he put it up on the meat counter and plugged it in. All it did was go because there was no reception here. There was no reception here at all. But anyway, everybody thought Tracy had lost his mind. Well, in April 1954, Channel 3 Burlington and Channel 8 Mount Washington came on the air. In 2 weeks' time, people were going to Windsor to get loans to buy TV sets. And they weren't cheap, you know, like $500, you know, and everybody was getting a TV set. Well, of course, in those days, if you got your TV set, you were only halfway there because you had to have a damn antenna. Remember those miserable things? They're always tipping over or broken or whatever. Kids would play, run them around. Oh, God almighty. Well, anyway, that changed culture like nothing else. People just said, instead of putting on community plays, doing traditional community activities, all of these things, all of a sudden, people are staying home watching TV. You know, they're watching Jackie Gleason and Playhouse 90 and the $64,000 question, Gunsmoke, and on and on. And that's what people just talked about. And that was life. that $64,000 question. I remember that one. Everybody was watching it. And did you see that guy last night? You think he's going to win tonight? Oh my God. Turned out later on it was all a fake, you know, it was all rigged. But anyways, that was what it does. And so what that did in Plainfield, we're always putting on a 3-act comedy with local people acting. And it's 35 cents for the PTA, you know, whatever, hot lunch program, whatever, raise money. And they have a performance Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday afternoon, and maybe Sunday afternoon too. Everybody loved that. That was great. So it got us out of the house and got us together. The other thing that I grieve about terribly, and I think you probably agree with me, is this. Up to the coming of television, on Sunday afternoon, everybody loved to do it. Yeah, get in a car and go visit somebody. Let's go over and see the Millers. You didn't call ahead and see if they were going to welcome you. Oh, you knew they were going to welcome you. Or if you stayed home, the Millers are going to, hey, look, the Millers are out here. Brett, come in, damn it. I mean, that kind of thing. That was wonderful, you know. And people stopped doing that. Now, good Lord, oh, no, they might be busy. Don't go near them. Gee whiz. Anyway, so the coming of television, I just can't overemphasize how much it changed life here. And then, of course, in those times, our biggest export really was our young people. Or just people got out of town and headed south somewhere else. They went in the military. Maybe they go down and work at Pratt & Whitney. Go to Manchester and get a beautician license, and you know, that was what happened to a great extent. Well, anyway, back with these two newspapers, Claremont and Lebanon, and here we go with a great newspaper war, a classic newspaper war, where two organizations are competing head to head to try to beat down the other one with better coverage, better pictures, more timely news, more comprehensive news, all of these things, the essentials of running of a highly competitive newspaper. The Eagle, they had bureaus in White River Junction, Lebanon, Windsor. They had, they were going full bore to fight off this new newspaper in Lebanon. A lot of emphasis on sports at that time. They killed each other on sports. You know, got to have a bigger headline on Hartford playing Lebanon. You know, that's a big deal. And so this paper would have a big spread, nice pictures. This paper would have a big spread, and it was off and running, but nobody was really winning at first until kind of a turning point was the great Grantham Mountain Forest Fire in 1953. And in that situation, what happened was they both did a magnificent job of coverage. One of them would charter a plane and take aerial photos. They just did all kinds of stuff to get that event covered really well. But what it did is it proved that the Valley News could do it. Up to that point, I think a lot of people thought it was a dilettante operation, but no, they were serious. They came on strong and did a good job. But this competition at times would get ludicrous, really crazy. I won a trip to go to Washington with 4-H. I was 16 years old. And a girl from Lebanon, she was going with me. There were 4 from each state. Anyway, we got on the train. In the middle of the week, I had on my necktie and jacket, oh boy. And Barbara, she had on a big puffy dress. Looked like a prom dress almost. You know, we're getting on the train. Conductor thought it was a shotgun wedding. But anyway, Valley News there takes a picture of these kids getting on the train, heading for Washington. Off they go. Next day, it's on the front page of the paper. In the Claremont Eagle newsroom, they saw that. Oh my God. They called up the Associated Press Bureau in Washington, D.C., said, we got to have a picture of these 2 kids in front of the Washington Monument. All right? So we got hauled down there, and we are standing. So that's on the front page the next day of the Daily Eagle. I mean, that cost money. Somebody laid out money to get that done. But that's the way it was. Well, this war was going on. Everybody was losing money. Okay? Butler, his wife, she's the one who wrote checks every Friday to cover payroll. And that's the way it was. Mrs. Clark was losing money because she'd lost a lot of her circulation and her advertising. And so they're going at it, and it seemed like a dead end for about 5 years. 1957, Mrs. Butler said, enough, I'm not giving you any more for this stupid newspaper. And so I put it up for sale. Along comes these two wealthy guys with deep pockets. One's a guy named Walter Payne, and the other one was James Ewing. They already owned the Keene newspaper and the little weekly in Newport. And they bought this basket case, really, and said, let's give it a run, see how it goes. Well, it was interesting what happened at the time of this changeover. The Butler crew had started this crusade, and Payne and Ewing continued it. And that was this, to root out corruption in Lebanon. And it was Lebanon was run like a dictatorship by a character named Joe Purley. All right, Joe Purley was a cattle dealer. He was a graduate of Dartmouth College, but he ran Lebanon. He had a bunch of disciples. They followed him along. And what the Valley News did was this. But a couple times a month, they'd put a picture on the front page of a house. And it would say, the taxes on this house are $424. And right next to it, they'd have a picture of a house that looked just like this one. Taxes on this house are $900. If you were in Lebanon, you knew why. That guy's a buddy of Joe's. This guy's an enemy of Joe's. And Joe's sticking it right to him. And Valley News sent a couple of reporters over to the town hall and demanded to see the assessing records. And Joe and a couple of his disciples, they picked him up and pushed him out the door, wouldn't let him see the damn records. But, you know, it was pretty, other crazy stuff. I mean, Joe, how could he run Lebanon so, with such power? And here's how he did it. You know, every year you got to have your tax rate. So you got all your property and you got it all listed off, okay? So you go down to the Concord and get your tax rate based on that bunch of property. Well, you come back and then you know in your head there's some new property on there that's not in that block of money. So you're always running a surplus. There's always a fund balance. So you can just do about as you please because you've got money nobody really knows about. And that's the way Joe did it. But so what this did was eventually lead in 1958 to Lebanon deciding to become a city just to get rid of Joe Purley. And that's what happened. Nobody thought that would happen, but it did. They voted, referendum. And that's why Lebanon's still a city. A couple times in the years since, there have been people say, oh, it was better when Joe Purley was running it. Let's go back. And people have said, no damn way. So that's pretty well, that's done. But that was a good example of what a crusading newspaper could do, root out corruption, get after it, and improve the life of a community. Anyway, so Payne and Ewing, they're going along covering the debts and the bills and paying the help, but not really doing much. And all of a sudden, 1961, the Valley News 1 month turned a profit. They were just about to throw in the towel, say the hell with it, or shut it down. And the Valley News turned a profit. Then it lost money a couple of months, and then it turned a profit for 2 months. And in the course of a year, the thing was profitable. So they hung on. They hung on. Well, a year later, Mrs. Clark said, this is insanity. I can't keep doing this. I'm burning up all my money. And so she sold the Eagle to another party. And in the years since, the Eagle's been bought and sold, I don't know, 7 or 8 times just recently the guy who was trying to make it go, he threw in the towel. His checks were all bouncing, and they shut it down back 1st of July. So anyway, the Valley News came along, and they just had this territory, and they're making a buck with it. Well, of course, critical part of it, two big factors that brought it. Number one, of course, the interstate highways. And that's a fascinating story in itself, because if you come up from Concord, and you get to exit 9, there's a big market basket there and a bunch of gas stations right there. The highway goes like that, straight ahead, goes towards Sutton. It could have gone that way towards Bradford. And that's because Claremont and Springfield and Windsor and Rutland said, no, the highway should go south of Mount Sunapee and cross the river there and go up the western side of Vermont, okay? And then other people said, no. It should go to New London and Lebanon and White River Junction, Montpelier, all right? So, but that was a battle. The newspapers, the politicians, everybody was in on it, lined up on one side or the other. It was a bitter fight. And it wasn't until really 1963 that the U.S. Federal Highway Administrator in D.C. said, I'm sick of it, this is where it's going to go. And, but why? How did that happen to work out the way it did? Very simple. James Cleveland, Congressman, New London. Norris Cotton, United States Senator, Lebanon. Lane Dwinell, Governor, Lebanon. Carl E. Kelton, White River Junction, Chairman of the Vermont Highway Board, all right? And Dartmouth College. You look at the history around here, Dartmouth College gets whatever it wants. And they wanted that highway to come near. And that's where it came, as you all well know. And so that was, that was it. That's how we came to be what we are. And of course, the term Upper Valley is very elastic. And over the years, it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And now there's a map from Vital Communities that's got 60 towns in it. Holy smoke. It's enormous, a big outfit. And to me, one thing that illustrates how crazy this thing's got, I was watching Channel 3 News one night, and they were teasing up a story for after the bunch of ads ran. And they said, big happenings in the Upper Valley. Oh, Jesus, I got to watch that. You know where it was they were talking about? Berlin, New Hampshire. Oh, come on. Gee, I couldn't believe it. But that's what they're doing. If you took them, well, when we used to have phone books, I used to add up every year how many Upper Valleys there were. You know, it was getting towards 100. I'll bet there's 150. Upper Valley, such and such company, charity, all these different things, clubs, whatever. Just amazing that here's this darn huge territory, and that's what we call it. Howard Dean, he was running for president, and he came over to Hanover. I went up to hear him speak in 1993. And it was an interesting way he looked at it. He said, really, this area, this Upper Valley, is a state within two states. A very interesting way of looking at it, is he said, okay, Vermont, all the power and influence is Chittenden County, all right? New Hampshire, all the power and influence is Concord, Manchester, Nashua, Seacoast. You know, it's way away. And here's this block of towns together. You say, well, divided by the river, aren't we? You're in the state line. But really, they're much more integrated and much more of a community. I'm happy to say, all right, we're a state. Good. We'll go along with that. I won't worry. But, we got regions, good Lord. Think of Northeast Kingdom, Seacoast, Monadnock, so on. That's okay. Why can't we be Upper Valley? Let's just say we are. So anyways, I'm getting too long here, but I just want to talk about as this great newspaper war ended or folded up, and the Valley News became the dominant media organization. and the Eagle struggled on but had nothing but trouble, star-crossed ever since. About the great changes that have come in this 75, 76 years since this whole thing started playing out. I think, as I already mentioned, number one I put at the list is the disappearance of hill country culture. Farms and a way of life. Carlton Gray was a great auctioneer. He sold farms and cattle, everything. Before he died, I talked to him. This was 25, 30 years ago. He said, you know, I made a lot of money, but what I did was I sold out a way of life. You know, just think about it. I say the bank of towns on either side of the river, up and down, and then a couple of banks of towns more to the west. Those farms, there were hundreds of them. There were farms where a family could milk 20 or 25 cows, have a big garden, raise some pigs, and at the end of the year, there'd be enough money to send a kid to college. I mean, that's the way it was. It was amazing. And that all just vanished, just gone. And, you know, I grieve about that. It saddens me, but that's the way it is. The slow extinction of the textile industry, Hartford, Woolen, Bridgewater, Quechee, so on, that all folded. In Lebanon, 1957, a corrupt financier from Boston bankrupted the mills, Bernard Goldfine. He should have gone to prison, but he didn't. Anyway, awful. The coming of the interstates, we just discussed that. I mean, think of it. We got interstates that go in 4 different directions right here, and we're right in the middle of it. In this time, land became an investment vehicle. If my late wife and I had had any money, when we got married in 1963, we could have bought hundreds of acres of land in Plainfield for $10 an acre. And the people who sold it to us were glad to have us take it off their hands if we'd been able to buy it. Well, time when those interstates were coming and it's getting more serious, people recognizing that they were going to change things. Well, land jumped to $20 an acre. And I remember hearing old timers in Plainfield saying, oh, it ain't worth it. It ain't worth it. Come on, no, $20, that's crazy. Oh yeah? Well, it was $20. And then it went to $100. And then it went to $1,000. And where the hell is it now? It's just unbelievable. So it became an investment vehicle, and that's it. The abrupt death of the machine tool sector in the southern, down towards the southern area, Windsor, Springfield, Claremont, it happened very fast. You know, Cone Automatic Machine, Jones and Lamson, Fellows, Bryant Chucking, and Joy, they all went away in a matter of about 8 or 10 years. Japanese came in with faster, better, bigger equipment, and those industries just vanished. Well, of course, we got to talk about the rise of Dartmouth College and the Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, of course, but Dartmouth rising to national prominence. I trace that really to June of 1953 when Dartmouth invited Dwight Eisenhower to come to Hanover and do the commencement address. And he made a very famous address, don't join the book burners. Okay, in other words, it was a cry against McCarthyism that he offered, but it brought Dartmouth national prominence. Instead of being a rich boy Northeastern institution, it became much more of a national institution, which it is today, as you all know. And then, of course, that medical center has just been growing and growing. I've got to talk about the diversification of the economy. Here, we're in pretty damn good shape. We can have a pretty bad recession nationally, but it really doesn't hit us hard the way it does other parts of the country. I mean, you look down the list of what we've got right here. Technology. You know, all these outfits, a lot of them have funny names, but they're doing, you know, cutting edge stuff. Healthcare, you know, you got the hospitals, you got the veterans. That's huge employment, very, very, you know, expanding. Education, we got Dartmouth, we've got research that goes on. Some outfits, geez, you wonder what they do. Criari. You ever heard of Criari? Oh my God. They do all this advanced research. Amazing. Manufacturing. We still got some pretty good manufacturing around here. You know, we got Timken Aerospace. And think about this hypertherm. My God, that is cutting edge. They're way up there, and they employ a lot of people. We got retail, trade, transportation, distribution. We still have agriculture and forestry, some resource-based industry. We got some tourism, but what do you mean tourism around here? Oh yeah, go to Quechee Gorge. If you don't believe me, or go to the Quechee Mall. Quechee Antique Mall, and these busloads of people from Texas roll in, and they go in and they buy rolling pins and candlesticks, and oh my God. So that's tourism, really, but there's a lot of other things happening here along that line. Financial services. My God, I don't know how many wealth managers we can handle around here, but we got them. Not to worry. And then we got retirement and leisure. You know, we got a whole bunch of these communities like downtown White River and Kendall and all these. I mean, they're bringing a lot of money into the community and providing a lot of employment. Well, anyway, my last point about the great change that's occasioned during this 75-year sweep of time is this: the changes in the political complexion of this region. It was solid Republican, but progressive Yankee Republican, all for many, many years. As recently as the early 1990s, Hanover and Lebanon both sent Republican delegations to Concord. Windsor County had 3 state senators, Republicans, and they owned it for life. You know, their tenure. It was there for all this time. But it's all changed now. It's Democrat for the most part. Occasionally, a Republican will slip in around Newport and Claremont down there, a little bit more Republican. But boy, Windsor County and Hanover, Lebanon, up and down the river, it's a huge, huge change. All right, well, I've talked long enough. Anybody have a question for me? Or you want to go home and watch Red Sox? No, they're playing on the West Coast, so you can't watch them till 11 o'clock or something. Yeah.
He's got a question.
Well, we got a baseball team now.
There's a good one. We got a baseball team right in White River, and that's wonderful. You know, though, in 1952, every town around here had a town team. Heartland had a town team. I remember there was a guy who lived in Cornish, and he played with him. His name was Gordon Cochran, and everybody called him Mickey. Mickey Cochran. He taught at Windsor High School, and he played for Heartland, and he could pitch. And they all said, oh, he can pitch with both arms. No. But anyway, he's a very famous guy, and he's the grandfather of that Cochran ski family up in Richmond. Yeah, they're big. But anyway, we had, Enfield would have a team, Lebanon would have a team, everybody would have a team. Tunbridge had a team.
I played for Tunbridge.
Yeah.
Played for South Royalton and the Hartford Indians.
There you go.
I played for the Hartford Indians.
Yes, sir.
And the last year we had it was 1964.
Yep.
No, 74.
Yeah, there you go.
That's when, and there was no more town team baseball.
That's right.
Or you say like we played
Yep.
Tunbridge, Chelsea. Chelsea had a pitcher that
Yep.
beat a guy from Dartmouth who actually pitched in the major leagues.
There you go.
They just come around.
Yeah.
They were like game,
Yeah.
what do you call it, barnstorming.
That's right. But it's wonderful. I mean, it's just a wonderful thing here for this region to have that ball team. Even if you only get 600 or 800 people at a game, I mean, it's just atmosphere. I love it. I mean, full disclosure, I host a couple of their players. And it's a wonderful experience for me. I learn a lot from these guys. They come from far away, but they're still in college, but they love baseball. And so that's great. Anybody else? Okay, let's go home. All right.